Thank you. I am Allyson Robinson. I work at Oklahoma State University and I'm in the Department of Wellness. My job is to help our programs that are all surrounding helping people with disabilities. And Lissa said that if I helped out, I could have the microphone. And so I get to be here to help with this panel today. And I'm so thankful because I have gotten to sit with these fine people and learn a little bit about them. So I look forward to learning from them as well. So the name of our panel is All Roads Lead to Accessibility. And we are going to start by having the panelists introduce themselves and describe the role that they currently have in their organization. We're going to start with Lindsay Foster and move around.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Foster. I am with Tarrant County College Connect Campus. Tarrant County College is a community college in the Fort Worth area of the DFW Metroplex. We have 6 brick campuses in our district, and I work at the fully online digital campus, Connect Campus. I am the instructional designer for accessibility. I work with faculty and staff on providing accessible materials and product for our stakeholders.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Morris. I'm currently a learning experience designer at Baylor University. I currently work with faculty in developing graduate online courses in specific programs. I previously have worked with Lindsay Foster in the same role that she has now at Tarrant County College. So you'll be hearing about that, our connection throughout this panel as well.
Hi, y'all. I am Glenda, the Good Witch of Accessibility Sims. I am currently at DeQ. So the company that I work for is one of the largest digital accessibility companies in the world. And I have the honor of being the Chief Information Accessibility Officer at DeQ. As I was designing my title with my CEO, there was the contemplation, do I be Chief Accessibility Officer? Or did Preeti, my CEO, want me to focus on the digital portion? So y'all, I care about all of accessibility, physical, all kinds of support, but I'm most versed in digital. So that's why there's the I in my title, which also is a nod to my Italian heritage because CIAO is ciao. So over to you, Rob.
Hey crew, again, I'm Rob Carr. I am Strategic Accessibility Coordinator at WebAIM. We are one of the smallest accessibility groups out there. Small but mighty, which is true. We're a nonprofit. We're based at Utah State University, and we do training, consulting, evaluation work around all different kinds of digital accessibility. Like I said in the talk this morning, but in case anyone is new this afternoon, my role focuses more on trying to help organizations to fold accessibility into their digital strategy, as opposed to just playing whack-a-mole when they get an evaluation report.
Okay, thank you so much. We are going to start with a question for all of you. And it is, what inspired you to get involved in accessibility? And was there a specific experience or project that marked your initial entry into the field? And I want to start with Rob.
So I worked for about 5 years at a school for kids with disabilities out on the Navajo Nation. And that's where I saw assistive technology for the first time. And a lot of it was augmentative communication. There wasn't as much like screen reader use, things like that, but I was just doing IT work. I wasn't doing anything real heroic. I was still exposed to AT. So then you fast forward to when I was at university right down the road. I was working at OU, and an accessibility thing came up, and I ended up talking to a vendor. And I think that awareness from my previous professional life played a massive role in kind of trying to steamroll my boss into letting me do accessibility. And fortunately, he did. And then, yeah, like I said, moved on to AbleTech and now at WebAIM. So yeah, for me, I think it was just a few intersections that were really key that landed me where I am now.
I love that I've known you for years and I didn't know that origin story. So my origin actually goes back to, I was originally an HR professional. And the person over the cube wall for me was the person that specialized in interviewing people with disabilities. And so I couldn't help but learn from Colleen. So I think that was the seed. And then later, as I became a developer and was hanging out at the University of Texas at Austin, both as a grad student or as a graduate of UT, as well as an employee, digital accessibility started to pop up, and I was drawn to it. And I think the biggest mark in my career was I had just moved on to the central web team at the University of Texas at Austin. It was exactly where I wanted to be. And I was sitting down in a chair where one of the girls had been one of the leading experts on campus in accessibility. And I said, I want to do that. Is that okay? Or did one of the other of you want to do it? They're like, no, you go do it, Glenda. And you have to meet this professor on campus. He's blind. He's an English professor. You should go meet him. And that was the magic, y'all, because the professor they sent me to go meet was Dr. John Slayton. And if you look at the web content accessibility guidelines, he was one of the editors. So magic door opened, and that was the beginning. Love it.
Okay, I think like so many people that are in the accessibility field, I just kind of fell into it. Didn't know that it was coming, didn't know that it was something that I could strive to be involved in. But my history is in K-12 education. I taught middle school math and science for several years. I did step out of that into STEM education outreach, and then eventually into instructional design for adult learners at a nonprofit. From there, I'd actually gone back into K-12 education and realized that what I truly wanted to do was be back in the instructional design field. And then there was this job opening that said instructional designer, and then off to the side for accessibility. So I applied for the job, and I honestly think that my experience as a K-12 educator and working with students with their IEPs and their 504 plans are what really made that transition go well and really helped me know what to do in working with those students.
So I, like Lindsey Morris, came from K-12 education. I started as I'm certified in elementary education teacher, and at the bottom of my heart, I will always be a teacher. But I worked in technology applications and taught K-5 technology applications to students. And I didn't know until I got into accessibility that as a general classroom teacher, I was providing accommodations and accessible opportunities for students. Like, I completely reorganized my computer lab because I had a student who was a wheelchair user. He had muscular dystrophy. And they had the lab set up so that there was only one seat that he could sit in. And I thought that it was unfair that everybody else got to pick where they sat. So I reorganized my entire lab so that he could pick a seat. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I moved through education. I became an educational technology coach. And then I became an educational technology coordinator. And I had the opportunity to go back and work for a boss that I had worked for when I was an educational technology coach, who happened to be Lindsey Morris's boss at Tarrant County College. And when I came on, Lindsay was handling all of the accessibility pieces as the instructional designer for accessibility. And I just said, I'd like to back you up, because everybody needs that, get hit by a bus plan. If someone gets hit by a bus, and our department had problems with people getting sick and people dying and family illnesses and those kinds of things. And so I volunteered to be her backup. And when she had the opportunity to move on to Baylor, I stepped into the role. But the two of us it was an opportunity for us to grow together because we had that K-12 art experience. And I had the additional lens. All three of my children are on the autism spectrum. So I have that neurodiverse, neurotypical that I live with every day. And so I had that lens as well. And I knew that I wanted to provide an experience for all of our stakeholders where all meant all, because we had these big banners at our institution that say, "You belong." And I'm like, you belong unless you have something that requires additional need, and then you don't. So I wanted to make sure that if we were going to promote that someone saw when they came to visit our campus that they in fact were welcome and that we were ready for them. So that's how I fell into it.
So good. Okay. The next question is actually for Glenda and Lindsay Foster, so you can keep your mics. And it is, how would you define accessibility and why is it crucial in today's digital landscape?
So one of the best definitions that I've lived with for digital accessibility or accessibility in general comes from Sharon Rush, who was one of my mentors. She runs Nobility, the nonprofit in Austin. And it's simply that everyone has equal access to independently get information and functionality. It's as simple as that. And I love, I'm not going to pull out WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and talk about all those things. It is, did you get what you need independently? And why is this important today? Well, computers are everywhere. Digital is everywhere. And it's in our finances. It's where we work. It's where we live. It's where we play. It's where we grow. It's where we learn. And so it's more critical than ever. And I'm excited about the future, but how do you define it, Lindsay?
I think your definition that you shared is fantastic. I would add to that when we say all means all means everyone in the room. And not everyone who looks like me, everyone who has the abilities that I have, everyone who had the opportunities that I had, whether that was because of birth, the accident of birth of my parents or what it is, but all means all. And when I say that as an educator, I mean that every student that I touch, every kid that came into my classroom, every faculty member now that I work with has an opportunity to learn, and I will meet you where you are. And I think that's important. And I agree that in the digital environment that we live in, and that's becoming more and more pervasive. Think about Amazon Echo in your home, Siri on your phone, those things that we rely on that were built for purposes of accessibility, but everyone has come to rely on a daily basis. And yet we still have inaccessible doors. We still have no ramps and stairs. I look and I say, we're making these amazing strides in some areas, but we have so far to go. And I'm excited to be a part of that journey, but we were saying at the table, I said, it's like a war and you get battle fatigue because sometimes you're so passionate about what we're doing. I think everyone in this room and everyone online is really passionate about what they're doing. But when you feel like you're the only one fighting the battle, you get battle fatigue and you get really, really tired. So again, to speak to what Rob was saying earlier, the more people we have, the better off it is. I think it was your presentation this morning. That's important. So I think that's why it's really key that we make this accessible.
Very good too. Okay. We have people who know about accessibility and people who are just getting started. So for the Lindsays, this next question is, for someone looking to start in accessibility, what online courses, books, or resources would you recommend for building a solid foundation?
Once again, a current theme of the weekend. Where did you get started? What helped you? It's WebAIM. So, I spent so much time sitting at my desk on WebAIM, learning everything that there was to learn. But in general, there are so many resources, free resources out there for somebody just getting started in accessibility. I would search for every single webinar that I could find, and I would just listen and take all of that information in, and then go and explore the resources that they would provide at the end of those webinars. There are so many colleges that put their accessibility resources online and they want you to use them. Like they're out, Creative Commons, take it, use it, adapt it for your purposes. So just search for the specific thing you're trying to focus on, that one thing that you're trying to tackle at the moment. And there are resources out there somewhere for that.
Absolutely. I have to agree with what Lindsay said. I would add on to that. I'm a big social media person. I'm big on the socials. I love my social media. I refuse to call one platform anything but Twitter. But I'm sure you know what platform I'm talking about. But Threads is definitely coming on. Follow people like Rob, people like Glenda, people that are in this room, people that are speaking here, the resources, those individuals that they've named, follow those individuals, whether you are using LinkedIn or some other professional social media, or whether you're using a social media, follow those resources. I like accessibility. Now it's going to drop out of my head. Social accessibility is one that I follow. There's another one that is, it's A11Y, and they do an amazing job of just restating WCAG in a way that the common man can understand. And they give really solid examples, and it's not in my head. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think what the hashtag is. But I encourage you to follow those people and then look at their lists and see who they follow and follow those people. Because one of the things Lindsay mentioned is there's tons of resources and you can research those. There's also some not so hot information out there that will come up at the top of searches. And, you know, we all know about critical thinking and searching, but not knowing what's bad when you're first getting in. And, you know, so look for people that are purported to be experts or well received in the community and follow those individuals and see who they're recommending and what resources they're recommending. DeQ is fantastic. I mean, I can tell you, Lindsay and I sat through a lot of WebAIM webinars, DeQ webinars, 3Play Media webinars, and the resources that they share, they all promote each other because they understand that this is a small community and we need to raise each other up. Follow those resources and see who they're recommending and take those recommendations and go from there, because you can get some bad advice as well.
That's such a good point. So knowing how to build your solid foundation and what to avoid, what would you two say people can do to get the hands-on experience in accessibility, especially if they are just starting?
So that's a great question. There are sometimes opportunities for internships, but even before you look at that, I would say, look for opportunities to do accessibility right where you already are. You know, I mentioned earlier in Rob's talk, are you making accessible emails? Are your Word documents accessible? Is your PowerPoint accessible that you're doing your presentation on? Start small and simple, and then Rob, don't kick me, but I'm going to say what you might be wanting to say. There's this little competition that Nobility runs. Should I save that for you to talk about? It's called Open Air. The Accessibility Internet Rally is what AIR stands for. And you can volunteer to help a nonprofit have an accessible website. It's hands-on experience. This man over here, are you the lead judge this year?
Well, yeah, no, past tense.
Past tense?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rob and I have been lead judges for that competition. And after you've been in the competition, we might recruit you to be a judge. We might recruit you to be a mentor. So for free, you can get hands-on experience doing it. You can be judged by experts, lovingly judged by experts. And you can be mentored. Quick question, Jennison, have you ever been a mentor? Oh, yeah. So imagine volunteering and getting Jennison as your mentor. Y'all, this program is golden. It's launched so many careers. Rob.
Well, Glenda said everything I was going to say. No, I mean, just to reiterate with AIR, it's going over, right? Airplane, yeah, for those online. So the competition is amazing. You can come in as a developer, as a designer, and just learn a ton. And Glenda's not overselling at all the level of expertise. at every level in mentoring and in judging. And we do try to, or we did, I'm going to hand over the lead judge duties to someone else, but always guided them to give feedback, give constructive feedback to these teams. They've worked really, really hard. So that's a great one. How many of you all are familiar with Tucklahoma here in state? Several hands went up, and this is much more of a local thing, but I am an Okie. I will say that Tucklahoma, I think, is getting ready to do a lot more with accessibility. I think that the Slack activity around it has increased a little bit, but I think that there will be avenues that will come in through that. Hopefully with things like OK Coders, which is their design and dev boot camp. That's more on the technical side, obviously. Glenda mentioned internships. There are some out there, but my advice with accessibility just in general, and I kind of said it in my talk before lunch, it's what's close to you. And this is just, again, to kind of reiterate what Glenda said, what's close to you. So when I started kind of nudging to get into accessibility, I was a software project manager at OU. And my boss was okay with me starting to do a little bit to work with campus on this payment gateway that was giving somebody trouble. So I started with that. And to reinforce what everyone else has said, I lived on WebAIM's website to figure out, what do I tell the IT crew at main campus about this thing, right? How do I articulate what's going on? So the things that are within arm's reach that aren't going to get you in trouble are the places to start. And if you're interested in evaluation, if you're interested in content or design, you can, especially if it is your job, begin to fold accessibility practice even one step at a time into what you're doing. And I think for a lot of us, that's how we started, right? I mean, we were doing our jobs and kind of got smacked by accessibility, but in a good way, and just took it and ran with it. So I think that that's probably right now the most common way people get into the space. They start literally with a piece of their job now, and the practice just expands and expands because there aren't really defined career pathways to become an accessibility geek. You just kind of have to do it.
You just go read WebAIM. You just go read WebAIM.
That has been the resounding answer for most people here.
I didn't even tell anybody at WebAIM to watch, by the way. So like, I haven't, it's too late. Yeah, we'll watch recordings though.
Okay, so we have a solid foundation and we have gotten some hands-on experience. So for Rob and Lindsey Morris, what essential tools or software should beginners familiarize themselves with when they're starting out?
So we're going to cue WebAIM up again. So to me, Wave is fantastic for beginners with web accessibility in particular. I think, frankly, there are other automated tools that integrate with, a development cycle of maybe better. But I think if you're just beginning, Wave puts icons on the screen, on the page, as close to an element that's being flagged as possible. Everything is really well documented. Wave will tell you why something was flagged, why it's an error. It'll tell you what the algorithm is in plain language. So it'll tell you how it decided to report something. And then it'll give you just very general guidance about how to fix it. I learned an absolute ton from that as I was getting into more of the web side of things. So that has been instrumental. To reinforce your point about social media, it might not be a tool the way Wave or X or anything is, but I was on Twitter. I'm not, and this is before it became X, it just became too much. But Twitter and LinkedIn did so much to just drop information right in front of me and make things much closer in proximity. Like, I didn't have to Google very much because I started to do what Lindsay was talking about, follow the right people, and stuff just comes across your feed. And you find these resources that are otherwise really, really difficult to track down. I will also give a shout out to the World Wide Web Consortium, the Web Accessibility Initiative. Over the last 5 or 7 years, the resources that they have online are fantastic. They've done a lot of work to re-architect all that stuff. And that's another tool that I think many of us have. If it's not some of their beginning documentation, it's some of the more advanced stuff that they have. But I think they're kind of from beginning till you're a seasoned pro trying to figure out this one niche kind of thing.
So I think for me, thinking back to as I was getting started, the assistive technology that I was used to, like in my middle school classroom, was only the things that were installed by the district IT people for specific students for a very specific purpose. And so as I started learning more and more, and I realized how many more things were actually just on your computer already, was a big deal. And so I would say familiarizing yourself with what everyone already has access to. So like your native text to speech apps. If you've never tried to navigate something with a keyboard, try that. It's a different experience. I know that built-in accessibility checkers came up earlier today, and I know that they aren't perfect, but if you're just getting into it and trying to learn what to check for, it's a great guide to help you get started. Just once again, knowing that it's not going to catch everything, but just to kind of get you there. When working with faculty now, I get them to master the accessibility checker in Canvas. And then once we've mastered that, then we can talk about some of the other things that we can start to do. So I think just familiarizing yourself with the things that are available and right there ready to help you get started.
Can I add just one more thing? Lindsay mentioned the native things that are on your tools that are accessible to you on your device. I'm a big proponent with my faculty because a lot of them have never heard a screen reader, and we have Microsoft tools. So I say, hey, open up Narrator and just listen. And if you're on Apple, open up VoiceOver. And if you're on Chrome, open up Chromevox. It will blow your world apart. And I try to equate like listening on a Bluetooth in a car when someone sends you an image via text and you have to hear all of those letters and then .img, why this is important. But I tell them that Narrator is like their gateway screen reader, and they can use that if they ever want to try something like, because JAWS is intimidating for people who don't know what they're doing. JAWS is intimidating for me, and I sort of know what I'm doing. So I think to reiterate that, and another site that hasn't been mentioned, another person, Accessibility Oz, GN Wild, has some amazing resources and tools available as well. And that's somebody that hasn't been mentioned yet.
That's good. Okay. I feel like we're simulating a person who's starting out. And so now at this point, we have to keep our ball rolling, right? There's a lot to learn. So for Glenda and Lindsay Foster, looked at the wrong one there for a second. Okay. Can you both share a challenge you faced early in your accessibility journey and tell us how you overcame it?
I'd love to. Which one do I pick from? Accessibility it has epic meaning. It's so valuable for what we're doing, but it's not easy. And so all along our journey, we're going to have stories. And the story I'm about to tell you, when I went through it, I hadn't heard or read about Derek Featherstone's The 5 Stages of Accessibility Grief. But as you're dealing with accessibility and you walk up to somebody who's never had to do accessibility before, they're going to go through shock, denial, anger, overwhelm before they even get to acceptance. I didn't know that when I was at UT, and the ticket vendor that we used for our football games was inaccessible. And it took months of my lawyers talking to their lawyers to say, no, you got to do this. And the company said UT had to pay for it because we were the only ones asking for accessibility. And we went, no, you're wrong. And let me get my friends from, name all the top universities. And when they finally let me through to the developers, and it, a lot of bruises by the time I got there, the developers were able to fix the problem in weeks. But there was one guy, and what he said was, this is just so stupid. Why would a blind person want to go to a football game? That's where I started with one of the guys. And I'm like, accessibility stages of grief. Wish I would have known that at that moment. And I'll never forget the day towards the end of the project when he called me and he said, Glenda, I just don't understand. I've made it so the person can print out their ticket. This was before electronic tickets, y'all. Print out their ticket, but I don't understand how they're going to get that ticket, use that ticket and get to their seat. Can you help me understand that? He actually cared. He went from the man who didn't think people that were blind would want to go to a football game to actually caring that they made it all the way to their seat. I had tears in my eyes and a lot of bruises.
Wow. I have to follow that. Okay. So, as Glenda said, we all have stories. I'm going to share, I think, a story that's, my story. I stepped into the accessibility job after Morris left. And before she left, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a double mastectomy. I was out for a few weeks because my plastic surgeon wouldn't allow me to go back to work. We have to walk a third of a mile from the parking garage to where our building is on campus, one way. And I was under surgical restrictions not to move because I had grafts that I had to take. And when I returned to work, we work in a building that used to be Radio Shack's corporate headquarters in downtown Fort Worth. And it's a lovely building. It has amazing views. It is not fully accessible. There are 2 access doors that are security guarded with badges for our area. And I was under surgical restrictions not to lift more than 5 pounds. The doors weigh more than 5 pounds. So every day, I would have to call a colleague and ask them to come and let me in so that I could go to my desk. And I would sit down at my desk and work. And I'm a coffee fanatic. I have a Keurig at my desk. Yes, I do. I have like coffee pods in the station. And at about 10 o'clock in the morning, I'd have to go to the bathroom. The bathrooms are outside our security doors. So I would have to ask a colleague, I need a bathroom buddy. Will you go to the bathroom with me? And every day for 6 months, I had to ask every time I had to come in, every time I had to leave our work area for someone to go with me. And I went to our campus president, who happens to be the workspace environment champion of the area. And I mentioned that we needed handicapped accessible actuators on our doors. And I asked for one of the 2 doors to have an actuator. I made that request. And I pointed out when I was initially told that it was a security issue because we share the building with a local high school program that has a biomedical sciences program, that it was a security issue and they needed to badge the doors in. And I pointed out that there are badge door actuators. I am still fighting that battle 2 years later. Now, that's not digital accessibility, but in order for me to do my digital accessibility job, I had trouble getting to my desk. And in the course of that, I ended up rupturing my Achilles tendon. I spent 6 months in a wheelchair. We had another member of my team have a leg injury. She spent 6 months in a wheelchair. And in all this time, we're still fighting to get a door actuator on one door. That's the story. It's very personal to me. And I think that, and I think about every student that I encounter. Our institution recruits heavily from the veteran community, and that's a high population with hearing impairment, and arguing that we need to have captioning on videos and that it be accurate captioning, because in the case of like my geology class, we were talking about subductive plates, and the auto captioning decided to turn it into seductive plates. Bow chicka wow wow, which my geology SMEs, my subject matter experts, were like, more people might sign up for geology if it were seductive plates. I was like, yeah, no, we're not going there. We are so not going there. I'm like, I don't even want to write the descriptive transcript for what happens when 2 plates seduct, because Anyway, so, but it's true and it's important. And all of those little tiny things, a tiny thing like opening a door is really important.
It is. And your story leads perfectly into the next question, and it's about advocating or being the champion. So this question is for Rob and Glenda, and it is, how can one effectively advocate for accessibility within their organization, especially if there's not a strong focus on it?
I think, I'll go back to when I was at Able Tech. A lot of it was getting into the right meetings. We all love meetings, but organizations make decisions about their culture based on what happens in them. And it's not the only way, and I'm not going to get a lot into the actual advocacy piece. If you're not in the right room, Zoom room, whatever it might be, then it's difficult to get those bigger steps taken, right? And that ceiling tends to stay lower. So a lot of what I did when I was at Able Tech was just try to figure out who to talk to. And that's often the more difficult part. I said in my talk, it can be really helpful just to, find out what resonates with leadership. Well, then how do you do that, right? And who do you need to talk to? And it's a discovery process to figure out how to get into those conversations or how to get those conversations started, but it's worth doing. Trust me, you can waste a lot of time talking to people that want to go the same direction you do, but can't give you any insights, can't get you access a level higher up in leadership. So I think a lot of it is figuring out what to say, yes, but who to say it to, who to communicate with, and who to listen to, who to receive information from as well. So I think, again, my strategic brain is like, let's make this harder. But if you don't think through that, if you don't map that out a little bit, I think you'll just find that you're repeating the same thing said ever slightly differently to more people more often. And if you can find some ways to hit those barriers less often, to maybe come out with fewer bruises, then it'll help you in the long run, which hopefully will help what you're trying to advocate for.
Wise words. I agree. The other thing that I want to say is you need to figure out how to have empathy. Once you figure out who you're going to talk to, I want you to have empathy for them, to recognize that chances are they don't know what you know. They're not all in on this accessibility journey. They haven't made this their career passion. And they may be dealing with, can I use fires today? Okay, maybe a bad idea. They could literally have their hair on fire from security. They could be have lawsuits flowing at them. You don't know how stressful it is at that level 1 up. And so I want you to approach it with care and to recognize that when you do that, when you think about how can I make their life easier? How can I protect their future from lawsuits? It's going to make a difference. They're going to feel that change as opposed to I'm coming in with all my cannons, which, okay, sometimes I do that with my boss, but it's not a really good persuasive technique. The other thing that I'll mention is there are some master classes that you might want to consider taking. One of my colleagues was like, oh, I signed up for master class. And he's telling me about all these cool classes that he's watching. There's a fabulous one by Daniel Pink. Absolutely fabulous. Included in there is a section on how to ask for a raise. Talk about persuading people. These courses are valuable. Have you ever been taught how to persuade others? And then I will say there's one other in there that's from like an FBI hostage negotiation guide. So these classes are powerful, and we have to learn how to speak up to those people so that they understand we're on their side as well as on the side of accessibility.
That's good. I'm going to add on here because one of the things I do a lot is advocate. And a lot of times I can say, that's my job. Because when I turn around, there's nobody behind me who's going to do that. And I see how small this group is of digital accessibility champions. And look behind you. There may not be another person who is there to advocate. So I love the idea of learning how, but I'm also about, sometimes not wrong, just do it. Sometimes we have to just start the conversation because maybe you're the only one who can do it. There's nobody behind you.
On LinkedIn, the woman that's leading accessibility at ADP, her name is Kelsey Hall, Hall. And she recently posted an article about the courage to be disliked. If you need to read that article, I will tell you that woman inspires the tar out of me.
That's good.
Can I just add, I love that you say that look behind you because there might not be somebody standing there. Look behind you because you may have someone who's asked you to stand in front of them. I had a friend who is in many minority situations, and a situation arose, and we had a long conversation, and I said, how can I help you? How can I be an ally to you and show you that I'm standing up for what I believe in? And she said, don't stand beside me, stand in front of me, because they won't throw rocks at you, they will throw them at me. And so look over your shoulder and see if there's someone standing behind you who needs your voice, because they need your voice.
That's good. Okay. I have one more question before we're going to open it for questions from the audience. And this one's for Glenda and Lindsey Morris. And it is accessibility standards and best practices evolve. How do you recommend staying updated on the latest developments and changes in the field?
So the way I'm doing it might not fit y'all, but I'm going to mention it. You can get involved in creating the next standard. How fun is that? The W3C is working on WCAG 3.0 right now. And you can volunteer to work on it. Okay, if that's not your bag, then the normal response is you need to get out of your bubble. You need to come to events like this because you need to hear what's going on from others. If you just stay in your bubble, you're not going to learn as much as if you come to an event like this or go to a free event like AxeCon. We just produced one. I think it was last week. Oh, that was a lot of work. It's free. It's recorded. You can do this. So for me, it's that. And one other, IAAP has a certification program. Get it. Get certified as part of the certification program. It will also encourage you to take continuing education credits. Very valuable. Keep learning.
And I know social media has come up so many times already during this panel, but just to reiterate, when you follow people on social media, they're helping keep you up to date on what's going on. I personally am not big on social media, but I have learned that it is such a valuable resource, and I am making myself become more and more involved and follow more and more people because I know that it's beneficial. And yes, there are so many different training programs and certifications, like you said, to go after. But yeah, don't be afraid to follow people, ask questions, and just explore everything, all the resources that are out there.
So good. Okay. Do you all here in this room or those joining us virtually have questions for this great panel? And I'll dedicate the mic to you.
Question over there.
Whose hand was up? Thank you. Okay. I was walking and didn't see you. All right, come on to you. There you are.
So do you find that for people to get into AT or, like to find employment kind of in it, do you think they need to have a computer background? Or do you think the certifications that some of these industries produce work? Like, how do you get your foot in the door for IT or AT?
Gosh, I want to ask Jennison, because Jennison is, I don't know, Jennison, are you willing to answer that, or you want me to answer first?
You go first.
Okay. So what I think is it's really good to sit down and talk to some people who are already in the industry and ask questions so that they can help you understand what you love to do and what opportunities there are. So find somebody here in this community to talk to first. And do I think you need a bachelor's degree in computer science? There aren't bachelor's degrees for what we're doing, so you don't need that at all. Will a certification help you? Yes, it will. And to let you know, DeCue University offers a free scholarship for all of DeCue University if you have a disability. Sign up for the scholarship, you'll get it. Inside our course materials, which cover almost everything you would need to know for digital accessibility, is how to study for the CPAC exam at IEEP. I know people that have launched their careers by doing that. So you don't need a degree in this field. But the reason I asked Jennison's opinion is when I think about accessibility jobs, even before Jennison was at LinkedIn, he's like the center of the accessibility job network. Do you have any thoughts, Jennison?
Okay. Well, in addition to just +1 to everything that you said, Glenda, I will say, I will add one thing that certainly if you're looking at a hands-on kind of more engineering type of job, absolutely you would need a bachelor's in computer science or computer engineering because you would just need to know that stuff in order to get into a company and in there. But certainly the certification is a way to go. I would also say part of it is if you just want to get started, there are a lot more internships I'm seeing pop up and opportunities to volunteer a little bit. You'd mentioned already the open air as an opportunity to kind of get some skills, and all of that stuff counts to put on your resume and to discuss as you're having conversations and interviews. All of those volunteer things and other internships, those all count as well. But you covered things off pretty solidly there, Linda.
Well, thanks.
Might I also suggest another in is to, if you're going to a conference, offer to be on the conference planning committee and help with the accessibility check, be the accessibility checker or run, a screen reader on their website to make sure it's accessible and offer to help them make those corrections or make their physical space accessible and, volunteer with organizations or your local community, whatever. Again, you can put that on your resume and it's, yes, it's unpaid, but you're still getting that practical experience.
So the question is, if you're looking for these kind of jobs, how would you look for them? Again, I would suggest sitting down and having a one-on-one conversation with somebody here that's already in the field, because I could give you a couple of keywords, but until I understand what you're really wanting to do, like words that I would look for are digital accessibility, and I would always look for WCAG, WCAG, but I'm making a huge assumption there as to what you're wanting to do. Was there a question over? I won't throw it at you.
It's more of a answer, another answer to that question. So Mike Hess from Blind Institute of Technology specifically teaches people who are blind to use Salesforce and places them in organizations who are looking to hire people with disabilities. So if you're blind or low vision and you want to get into the technology field, their institute will actually absolutely train you and place you in an organization.
And
Yes, blindinstituteoftechnology.org.
And doesn't Jobs Accessibility Network, JAN, also have a hiring system as well? It's JAN.
We're trying to get the microphone over to you so you can repeat that. Hold on just a second, please.
I would say, isn't it the Jan one more like it's where jobs that are particularly pursuing the accessibility are there?
I know that they're looking to help those who have disabilities make connections with
Okay.
organizations that are looking to hire,
Yeah.
similar to what Dax was talking about. So yes,
Good questions. What else we got from the room? Anybody else or from online?
Blind Institute of Technology.org.
Come on to you, Jennison. You should have brought both mics down to the floor.
I'm having, for those of you who know radio, I'm having one of those 7-second delay moments with Glenda. So I will say about LinkedIn and jobs, if you go to the platform LinkedIn and are searching for jobs, we actually have a number of job titles on accessibility. So if you type the word accessibility in, we have an accessible drop down that you can choose from one of, I believe it's 18 different job titles in accessibility to help you at least narrow that down. And also on your own profile, because you also can be recruited over LinkedIn, you can add specific accessibility job titles so that you can be found that way. That might not be for when you're just starting out, but it's for if you're just starting out, searching for job titles with the word accessibility on LinkedIn can be made easier that way as well.
Right. Any other questions?
I have one more if they don't.
Go for
Any
it.
from the online group? No?
Adam, do you have any?
All right. Okay, I have one more question for everybody. And Alyssa asked this at the fireside chat with Jennison yesterday. And so I'm going to ask you the same one as we close. What do you think is one small thing we can all do when we leave here to make accessibility a little better? Anybody can start.
It's a duel.
So I'll start. I think the one thing that you can do, we talked about this when we were all kind of visiting before we came up here, and something Glenda said sparked in my brain and made me think of this. Do not compare yourself, to others. So your middle might be somebody else's beginning or someone else's end. So don't look at someone else's middle or end and think that you're behind, because you're just getting started. Pick one thing and get started. I equate that for my faculty as if you're familiar with the running program Couch to 5K, anybody who is up off the couch is ahead of the people on the couch, even if you're not running a 5K.
I would say just don't stop talking about it. Accessibility is not officially a part of my job title anymore, but I'm not going to stop talking about it. It takes all of us working together and doing what we can contribute in our own spaces to really help move this forward. So just keep doing it.
Next.
Well, certainly, I'm holding the microphone. I might as well. Take care of yourself, I would say. I think that's huge. Burnout is big in a lot of roles. Burnout in accessibility is very much a thing. And so I think if there's one thing, yes, keep the conversations going. But I had a tendency to think that I could do far more and influence people in far different ways than I actually could. It's a really good way to run yourself right into the ground. So just take care of yourself, check in with yourself every once in a while. I think it's important. Figure out when you need to recharge a little bit. How do you do that? Because it can be, I don't want to be like the cynic now. Like, oh, this guy Rob is depressing me about my life choices professionally. But I think it's important in any professional endeavor to just keep an eye on how you're doing. And are you flying a little close to the sun? And is the wax starting to get a little soft?
What I love is that was one of the things I was absolutely going to say. And so I wanted to reiterate, it is so easy to see how epically important this work is and to think that you have to solve it all. That's not sustainable. Don't burn yourself out. And when the girls over here were talking about look behind you, there's nobody behind you, or you need to stand in front of someone because they've had too many rocks thrown at them. The other thing is look behind you and offer a hand to help somebody in. And then you're thinking, oh, I don't know as much as Rob knows, so I'm not good enough. When you help someone in, you start to realize you do know a lot and you can help them and they help you. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then just to end on a high note, I want you to think of accessibility as an adventure, and you are the Indiana Jones of accessibility. You do not have to go after each one of these epic opportunities. But when you have the energy, pick one and go for it. And if you don't get it, or you fall, or you get a scrape on your knee, it's okay. Come find your community, recharge, refresh, and we'll try again.
Thank you, all of you. And thank you, Lissa, for letting me do this and get a front row seat to this amazing session. And thank you guys for your input and your questions in the audience.